The first time I defied my father, I was 7 years old. Instead of practicing piano scales like a proper Montgomery daughter, I composed my own melody, a childish tune about butterflies and rain. When he caught me, his disappointment echoed through our mansion's music room louder than any symphony. "That's not how a Montgomery succeeds," he said, closing the piano lid over my small fingers. "I'm Noelle, and 23 years later, I'm still composing my own melodies, still disappointing Edward Montgomery." The day everything changed, I was sitting at that same piano, my fingers dancing across ivory keys that had witnessed countless family arguments. The piece I played was my latest composition, something raw and rebellious that would have made my father's perfectly groomed mustache twitch. "Not this again." His voice boomed from the doorway. "The company meeting starts in 20 minutes. You should be there, not wasting time with this nonsense." I kept playing, letting the music speak for me. The melody grew darker, angrier. "Noelle." His shoes clicked against the hardwood floor as he approached. "You're 30 years old. It's time to grow up and take your place in Montgomery Furnishings." My fingers slammed the final chord. "My place? You mean designing catalogs and attending boring board meetings?" "It's your legacy," he said, as if that explained everything. "My legacy is music." I stood up, meeting his steel gray eyes. "I've been offered a chance to perform in Paris. Real venues, real audiences." "Paris?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "And what about the business? Your sister Marin can't handle everything alone." "Marin loves the business. I don't. I never have. You're choosing street performances over your family's century-old legacy?" His voice dropped to that dangerous quiet I remembered from childhood. "Think carefully about this, Noelle." "I already have." I pulled an envelope from my bag, my one-way ticket to Paris. "I leave next week." He stepped closer, towering over me like he did when I was 7. "If you walk out that door, don't expect to come back. No trust fund, no safety net, no family name to fall back on." "Dad, please, no." He held up his hand. "You're either a Montgomery or you're not. Choose." My best friend Paris's words from last night echoed in my head. Sometimes family is just people you share DNA with. Real family supports your dreams. I grabbed my sheet music from the piano. Then I guess I'm not a Montgomery anymore. "Noelle." Marin appeared in the doorway, her eyes wide. "You can't be serious." "I am." I hugged her quickly, breathing in her familiar lavender perfume. "I'm sorry, but I have to do this." "You'll regret this." My father called as I walked away. "When you're struggling on some Parisian street corner, remember? You chose this." I paused at the door, my hand trembling on the knob. "No, Dad. You chose this. You're the one making me pick between my passion and my family. That's on you." The last thing I saw was Marin's tears and my father's rigid back as he faced the window. The last thing I heard was the heavy thud of the front door closing behind me. Outside, the spring air felt electric with possibility. My phone buzzed. A text from Paris Walker, my namesake friend who'd been performing in France for years. "Did you do it? Are you finally free?" I took one last look at the Montgomery mansion with its perfectly manicured lawns and imposing columns. The place where I'd spent 30 years trying to fit into someone else's dream. "It's done," I texted back. "No more Montgomery Furnishings, no more disappointed father, just music." "Good girl," Paris replied. "Your room in Montmartre is ready whenever you are. Time to show Paris what you're made of." I smiled, already hearing new melodies in my head. Songs of rebellion, freedom, and the bittersweet taste of choosing yourself over family expectations. A week later, I boarded a plane with nothing but my music sheets, a small suitcase, and the determination to prove my father wrong. As the aircraft lifted off, I started humming that childhood tune about butterflies and rain. Only now it had evolved into something else. A song about spreading wings and flying away from golden cages. What I didn't know then was that sometimes leaving isn't really an ending. Sometimes it's just the first note of a much longer composition. One that would eventually bring me full circle, face to face with everything I thought I was leaving behind. But that's getting ahead of the story. First, I had to learn how to survive on those Parisian street corners my father had sneered about. And surprisingly, that turned out to be the easy part. You're holding back again, Paris said, tapping her foot against the cobblestones of Montmartre. That piece needs more anger, more passion. You're playing it like you're still sitting in Daddy's music room. 6 months into my Parisian adventure, and I was learning that freedom came with its own kind of pressure. The morning crowd gathered around us, tossing euros into Paris's open violin case as we performed our daily street concert. I'm trying, I said, flexing my fingers above my portable keyboard. It's just nothing. Paris tucked a strand of purple hair behind her ear. You left everything behind to be here. Show them why. She was right. I closed my eyes and started again, letting my fingers tell the story I'd been holding back. The melody grew wilder, darker, filling the square with the sound of breaking chains and burning bridges. Now that's what I'm talking about. Paris joined in with her violin, our instruments dancing together in a duet that made tourists stop and stare. A man in a charcoal blazer lingered at the edge of the crowd, scribbling in a small notebook. I'd seen him before, watching our performances with intense focus. As the final notes faded, applause erupted around us. The man in the blazer approached while others dropped money into our cases. Magnificent, he said, his English carrying a slight French accent. I'm Jacoby Kelly, music critic for Le Monde, Paris interrupted. We know who you are. You've been watching us for weeks. He smiled, unfazed. I'm particularly interested in your original compositions, Noelle. They have a unique, what's the word? Raw authenticity. Thanks, I said, packing up my keyboard. But if you're looking for the next classical prodigy, I'm not it. No, he agreed. You're something far more interesting. Would you join me for coffee? Both of you? Paris and I exchanged glances. She shrugged. Café Deux Moulins is right around the corner. Over espresso and croissants, Jacoby leaned forward. Tell me, why does a Montgomery play street music in Paris? My cup clattered against its saucer. How did you... I do my research. Your father's furniture empire is well known, even here. Was well known, I corrected. I'm not part of that anymore. Clearly. His dark eyes studied me. But that anger, that rebellion in your music, it's still about him, isn't it? Paris kicked me under the table, but I ignored her warning look. My music is about freedom. Is it? Jacoby pulled out his notebook. Because what I hear is a conversation with absence. Every note asks, "Are you listening now, Father?" That's enough, Paris interrupted. We didn't come here for psychoanalysis. No, he agreed. You came because I can help. I'm curating a series of performances at Le Petit Journal. Underground classical fusion, breaking boundaries, challenging expectations. Your style would fit perfectly. My heart raced. Le Petit Journal was a legendary jazz club where real musicians performed, not street artists like us. What's the catch? Paris asked. No catch, just an opportunity to be heard by the right people. He slid his card across the table. Think about it. After he left, Paris grabbed my arm. This is it, your chance to prove everyone wrong. But I was staring at my phone, at a news alert I'd set up months ago. Montgomery Furnishings reports third quarter losses. Noelle? Paris waved her hand in front of my face. Earth to Noelle. Sorry, it's just... I showed her the article. Looks like Daddy Dearest isn't doing so well without his daughters. Good, Paris said firmly. Let him struggle. Focus on this opportunity instead. But something twisted in my stomach. Not quite guilt, not quite satisfaction. Maybe Jacoby was right about my music being a conversation with absence. That evening, I practiced in our tiny apartment, trying to capture that raw energy from the morning's performance. Paris sat cross-legged on her bed, violin in lap. You know what your problem is? She said suddenly. You're still playing for him. Even here. Even now. I am not. You are. But maybe... She grinned mischievously. Maybe that's not such a bad thing. What do you mean? Think about it. Le Petit Journal gets written up in all the major papers, international reviews. If you really want to show Daddy Dearest what he lost. I stopped playing, the possibility taking shape in my mind. You're terrible. I'm brilliant, she corrected. Call Jacoby. Take the gig. Show the world what happens when you try to cage a Montgomery. I reached for my phone, then hesitated. What if he's right? What if I'm just nothing? Paris said, echoing her words from this morning. You're not that scared 7-year-old anymore. You're an artist. It's time everyone knew it. Especially your father. I dialed Jacoby's number, my fingers steady on the keys. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying someone else's dream. It's about building your own, right where they can see it. Surprise! Marin's voice rang through our tiny Montmartre apartment, making me drop my coffee mug. It shattered on the floor, dark liquid spreading like spilled secrets across the tiles. What are you? How did you? I stammered, staring at my sister standing in the doorway, her designer outfit completely out of place among our bohemian decor. Paris gave me your address, she said, dropping her Gucci bag on our secondhand couch. Don't be mad at her. I practically begged. I shot Paris a betrayed look as she emerged from her room. She shrugged. Family drama makes for better music. You'll thank me later. I doubt that, I muttered, grabbing paper towels to clean up the mess. Why are you here, Marin? My sister's perfectly maintained smile faltered. Can't I visit my big sister? After a year of radio silence, try again. Marin sank onto the couch, suddenly looking exhausted. The business is failing, Noelle. Really failing this time. I know. I read the reports. I kept wiping the floor, avoiding her eyes. No, you don't understand. Dad's losing everything. The main factory, the showrooms, even the house might have to go up for sale. That made me stop. The house? But it's been in the family for 4 generations, yes. Marin leaned forward. We need help. Fresh ideas, new marketing strategies. Something to attract younger clients. And Dad sent you to ask for my help? I laughed bitterly. That doesn't sound like him. He doesn't know I'm here. She twisted her wedding ring nervously. But I've seen your performances online. The videos from Le Petit Journal. You're making waves, Noelle. People are talking about your music, your style. So? So we need that. That energy, that modern edge. She stood up, pacing our small living room. The furniture business is dying because it's stuck in the past, just like Dad. Paris, who'd been unusually quiet, spoke up. Your sister's about to have her first major solo concert. Critics are flying in from all over Europe. This isn't exactly the best timing. Or maybe it's perfect timing, Marin countered. Think about it. All those influential people in one place? We could turn it into an event. Showcase some pieces, blend art with furniture design. Stop. I held up my hand. Just stop. You want me to turn my concert into a furniture sale? I want you to help save our family's legacy. Our legacy? My voice rose. Where was this family loyalty when Dad cut me off? When you all stopped returning my calls? Marin's face crumpled. I was wrong, okay? We were all wrong. But this isn't about Dad's pride anymore. There are 300 employees who could lose their jobs, real families who depend on us. The room fell silent except for the distant sound of street musicians below. Paris touched my arm gently. Maybe you should hear her out. You can't be serious. Think about it, she said. You wanted revenge? What better revenge than swooping in to save the day? Make Dad admit he needs the daughter he rejected? A knock at the door interrupted us. Jacoby stood there looking surprised at our little gathering. Bad time? Perfect time, Paris said before I could speak. We were just discussing Noelle's upcoming concert. Ah, yes. He smiled, entering the room. The buzz is building. I've had calls from critics in London and Berlin who want to attend. Marin's eyes lit up. See? This is exactly what I mean. We could— Marin, please. I rubbed my temples. Jacoby, this is my sister. She's here to recruit me for a family business intervention. His eyebrows rose. The Montgomery Furniture Empire? I read about their troubles. Fascinating situation. There's nothing fascinating about watching your father's life work crumble. Marin snapped. No? Jacoby settled into our reading chair. A traditional business facing modern challenges, a prodigal daughter finding success in exile, and now a potential redemption arc? Sounds like quite the story to me. This isn't a story, I said. This is my life. Everything's a story, Noelle. The question is, how do you want this one to end? I looked around the room, at Marin's hopeful face, Paris's knowing smirk, Jacoby's analytical gaze. The coffee stain on the floor had dried into a dark pattern, like a musical note. I need air, I announced, grabbing my jacket. Don't follow me. But of course Paris did anyway, catching up to me on the stairs. You know you're going to help them. Am I? Yes, because you're still that little girl at the piano trying to make Daddy proud. Only now you can do it on your terms. I stopped, turning to face her. What if I fail? What if you succeed? She grinned. What if you save the business and prove that following your dreams wasn't a mistake? Now that would be a melody worth playing. Above us, I could hear Marin and Jacoby's voices drifting down the stairwell, already discussing possibilities. My upcoming concert suddenly felt like a crossroads, a chance to either bury the past or transform it into something new. Fine, I said, but we do this my way. Paris linked her arm through mine. I wouldn't expect anything less from a Montgomery. The last person I expected to see at Le Petit Journal was my father, yet there he stood in the dimly lit club, looking as out of place as a penguin in the Sahara. His perfectly pressed suit contrasted sharply with the venue's bohemian atmosphere. He's been here for 20 minutes, Paris whispered as I prepared for my set. Hasn't touched his wine, just keeps staring at the stage like it might bite him. How did he even know? Marin, we said simultaneously. I peeked through the curtain again. Dad sat rigidly at a front table while Jacoby chatted animatedly beside him. The critic caught my eye and winked, clearly enjoying the drama he'd helped orchestrate. Ladies and gentlemen, the club owner announced, please welcome to our stage, Noelle. The spotlight hit me as I walked to the piano. My father's face remained impassive, but his knuckles whitened around his untouched wine glass. I began with my newest piece, one I'd composed after Marin's visit. The melody started soft, questioning, then built into something fierce and demanding. In the front row, Jacoby nodded approvingly, scribbling in his ever-present notebook. When the final note faded, the crowd erupted in applause. Everyone except my father, who stood abruptly and headed for the exit. Oh, no you don't, I muttered, grabbing the microphone. This next piece is dedicated to my father, who's trying to leave early. Dad, this one's called Golden Cage. He froze mid-step. The audience turned to look at him, and social pressure forced him back to his seat. The song poured out of me. All the anger, all the love, all the complicated years between us. When I finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the house, except his. Quite a performance, he said afterward, approaching the stage while the crowd dispersed. Very emotional. That's kind of the point of music, Dad. Yes, well. He straightened his tie. Marin tells me you might be interested in helping the business. Marin talks too much. She also mentioned you're drawing quite a crowd these days. International attention. I started packing up my sheet music. Just say what you came to say. Fine. He pulled out a chair, sitting with military precision. We're hosting a gala next month. Potential investors, key clients, media. We need something different. Something to show we're adapting to modern tastes. And you want me to perform? I laughed. What happened to wasting time with nonsense? Things change. His jaw tightened. The market changes. We need to change with it. Or what? The company dies? People lose their jobs, he snapped. Families suffer. Is that what you want? Jacoby materialized beside us, notebook in hand. Fascinating proposition. The prodigal daughter returns to save the family business through art. The press would love it. Stay out of this, Dad and I said simultaneously. See? Already in sync. Jacoby smiled. Think about it, Noelle. Your music, your terms, your chance to prove everyone wrong. This isn't about proving anything, Dad protested. Isn't it? I challenged. You're here because you need me. Because everything you dismissed as worthless might actually save your precious legacy. I'm here because you're my daughter. Now you remember that? Paris appeared with my coat. Sorry to interrupt this touching family reunion, but Noelle has an interview with Radio France in 30 minutes. Dad stood, straightening his cuffs. The gala is on the 15th. Marin has the details. Your choice if you want to participate. As he turned to leave, I called out, if I do this, it's my way. My music, my vision, no compromises. He paused. You always were stubborn. I learned from the best. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. The 15th, Noelle. Don't be late. After he left, Paris hugged me from behind. You're going to do it, aren't you? Maybe. I leaned into her embrace. But not for him. For revenge? Jacoby asked, still taking notes. For myself. I touched the piano keys one last time. And for that little girl who just wanted to make her own music. Well, Paris grinned, if we're going to save a furniture empire through the power of piano, we better start planning. I'm thinking dramatic lighting, multimedia displays. And perhaps, Jacoby added, a story about family, forgiveness, and finding your way home. I picked up my bag, feeling the weight of the decision settling on my shoulders. No, not home. Sometimes you have to break everything down to build something better. Now that, Jacoby said, closing his notebook with a flourish, is a headline I can work with. Outside, the Paris night sparkled with possibility. Somewhere across the city, my father was probably already regretting his offer. But it was too late. The stage was set. The players in position. Time to compose a new ending to this family drama. This is a disaster, Marin declared, pacing the rehearsal space we'd rented near the Champs-Élysées. The gala is in 2 weeks, and you want to do what? Transform the showroom into an interactive musical experience, I repeated, watching her face contort. Each piece of furniture will have its own musical theme, playing when people approach. Dad doesn't have a choice. I gestured to the mood boards Paris and I had created. The old way isn't working. You said it yourself. Jacoby lounged on a prototype chair we'd borrowed from the showroom, taking notes as usual. She's right, you know. The concept is brilliant. Luxury furniture meets avant-garde performance art. But, Marin started. But nothing. A new voice interrupted. We turned to see a young woman in a sharp blazer standing in the doorway. I think it's exactly what we need. And you are? I asked. Laura McCarthy, your father's new marketing director. She strode in, heels clicking purposefully. I've been trying to convince the board to try something revolutionary, but they won't listen to me. They might listen to you. They didn't listen to me for 30 years. Why start now? Because now you have leverage. She smiled sharply. And because I've seen your performances, you understand something they don't. Emotion sells. Paris picked up her violin. Show her what we've been working on. I sat at the piano while Paris positioned herself near the furniture displays. The melody began softly, almost traditionally, before morphing into something more contemporary. As the music shifted, Paris moved between the pieces, each segment of the song highlighting different furniture styles. See? I explained as we finished. Each piece gets its own musical identity. Modern meets classical, just like the furniture meets contemporary design. It's perfect, Laura breathed. But there's one problem. Just one? Marin muttered. Your father's business partner, Aston, he's traditional. Very traditional. He'll fight this. Let him, I said, standing. I'm not here to make friends. Jacoby closed his notebook with a snap. No, you're here for revenge. I'm here to save the company. Are you? He moved closer, his voice low. Because everything about this screams, I told you so. The elaborate production, the dramatic transformations, you're not saving the company, you're proving a point. What's wrong with both? Paris interjected. Nothing, if she admits it. Jacoby's dark eyes held mine. But revenge and redemption are different melodies, Noelle. Which one are you really playing? Before I could answer, the door opened again. My father entered, followed by a silver-haired man I recognized as Aston. What's all this? Aston demanded, gesturing at our displays. The future, Lara said firmly, if you'll let it be. Dad surveyed the room, his expression unreadable. Show me. We performed again, this time with Lara narrating the concept. I watched my father's face, searching for any hint of approval or disdain, but he remained frustratingly neutral. Aston didn't bother hiding his opinion. This is ridiculous. We sell furniture, not concert tickets. We're selling an experience, I countered. Something unique, memorable. When was the last time anyone felt emotional about a coffee table? This isn't some street performance. No, it's better. I cut him off. It's innovation. It's passion. It's everything this company has forgotten how to be. Edward, Aston appealed to my father. You can't seriously be considering this circus act. Dad walked to the piano, running his finger along its polished surface. What do you really want, Noelle? What? From this. From us. What's your endgame? The room fell silent. Paris squeezed my hand, while Jacoby leaned forward, pen poised. I want to prove that different doesn't mean wrong, I said finally. That sometimes the best way to honor tradition is to reinvent it. Dad nodded slowly. And if I say no? Then you'll never know if I could have saved everything you built. He turned to Aston. Give them the showroom, full creative control. Edward? My daughter gets one chance to prove herself. His eyes met mine. Don't make me regret this. After they left, Marin hugged me impulsively. I can't believe that worked. It hasn't worked yet, I reminded her. We have 2 weeks to pull off a miracle. About that, Lara said, pulling out her tablet. I have some ideas for the multimedia aspects. As they discussed technical details, Jacoby pulled me aside. You still haven't answered my question. Revenge or redemption? I watched Paris demonstrating something to Marin, who was actually laughing. Watched Lara's excitement as she outlined marketing strategies. Felt the weight of my father's challenge in my chest. Maybe, I said quietly. They're the same song in different keys. He smiled, writing something in his notebook. Now that's a story worth telling. Everything's falling apart, Marin announced, bursting into the showroom during our final rehearsal. Aston's been calling all the major investors, telling them not to come. I kept playing, letting the music drown out my rising panic. The transformed showroom around me was a testament to 2 weeks of sleepless nights and endless arguments. Interactive lighting systems pulsed in sync with my melody, casting elegant shadows across the furniture displays. Let him try, Lara said, not looking up from her laptop. I've already confirmed attendance from 3 major design magazines and a dozen social media influencers. We don't need his old money contacts. Paris adjusted a speaker, her purple hair catching the shifting lights. Besides, once they see what we've created... If they see it, Aston's voice cut through the room. He stood in the doorway, my father beside him. Edward, this is your last chance to stop this madness. Dad surveyed the room, taking in the elaborate setup. It certainly is... different. It's embarrassing. Aston spat. Turning our flagship showroom into some sort of nightclub? This isn't what your father built. No, I said, standing from the piano. Grandfather built a company that understood its time. We're doing the same thing, just in a different era. You know nothing about this business. I know enough to see it's dying. I walked toward them, my heels clicking against the marble floor. When was the last time anyone under 40 got excited about your furniture? She has a point, Lara interjected. Our market research shows. Market research? Aston laughed. Is that what you call this circus? These lights and sounds and whatever this is supposed to be? This, Paris said, stepping forward, is called innovation. Maybe if you tried it sometime. Enough. Dad's quiet command silenced the room. He walked to the nearest display, where a handcrafted dining table stood bathed in shifting light. How does it work? I pressed a key on the piano, and the table's designated melody filled the air. A gentle, sophisticated tune that complemented its classic design. Motion sensors triggered subtle variations as Dad walked around it. Each piece tells its own story, I explained. The music changes based on how people interact with the furniture. It's not just about looking anymore. It's about experiencing. It's about gimmicks, Aston countered. It's about emotion. Jacoby's voice came from behind us. He'd been so quiet in his corner, I'd almost forgotten he was there. The same emotion that made people fall in love with these pieces in the first place. Dad touched the table's surface, listening to the musical response. And you really think this will work? No, I said honestly. I think it's either going to be brilliant or a complete disaster. But isn't that better than slowly fading away? A ghost of a smile touched his lips. You sound like your mother. Edward, Aston warned, don't let her manipulate you with memories. Funny, I shot back. I thought that was your job. The tension crackled until Marin stepped between us. The gala starts in 6 hours. We either do this together or we don't do it at all. Dad straightened his tie. The decision's been made. We proceed as planned. Then I wash my hands of this. Aston headed for the door. When it fails, remember I warned you. After he left, the room exhaled collectively. Lara immediately jumped into action, directing the setup crew, while Paris returned to fine-tuning the sound system. He'll try to sabotage this, Marin warned. Let him try. I returned to the piano. We've got something he doesn't. What's that? Dad asked. Hope. I started playing again, letting the room's technology dance with my music. And really good acoustics. He watched me for a moment longer, then turned to leave. At the door, he paused. Noelle? Yes? Your mother would be proud. He cleared his throat. Of all of this. The words hit harder than I expected. By the time I looked up, he was gone. Jacoby appeared at my shoulder. You okay? Ask me after tonight. I glanced at his notebook. Writing the story of my triumph or my downfall? I'm writing about a woman who's either saving her family's legacy or burning it down in spectacular fashion. He smiled. Either way, it's a hell of a story. Places, everyone, Lara called out. Final run-through before we open the doors. As the team scattered to their positions, Paris squeezed my shoulder. Ready to make history? I looked around the transformed showroom, at Marin directing staff, at Lara coordinating with press, at the beautiful fusion of old and new that we'd created. Everything hinged on the next few hours. History, revenge, redemption, I said, cracking my knuckles over the keys. Let's make some music instead. The melody that filled the room was everything we'd worked for. Bold, beautiful, and impossible to ignore. Just like the truth we were about to prove. Or the legacy we were about to destroy. The gala was in full swing when everything went wrong. The power cut out mid-performance, plunging the showroom into darkness. My fingers froze on the piano keys as panicked murmurs rippled through the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, Aston's voice rang out, smug and clear. Perhaps this is a sign we should return to tradition. Don't move, Paris whispered in my ear. Lara's on it. The emergency lights flickered on, casting an eerie glow across the faces of Paris's elite. Fashion editors clutched their champagne glasses while investors whispered among themselves. My father stood rigid near the entrance, his expression unreadable. I apologize for the technical difficulties, Aston continued, moving to the center of the room. As I was saying to our investors earlier, some things are better left unchanged. The lights blazed back to life, and with them, every musical element we'd programmed. The room filled with a cacophony of competing melodies as all the furniture pieces activated at once. "Kill the sound," Marin shouted from somewhere behind me. "No," I said, standing up. "Everyone, please be quiet." To my surprise, the room fell silent, save for the chaotic music. I walked to the center of the showroom, feeling every eye on me. This is perfect, actually. I gestured to the discord around us. This is exactly what happens when we fear change so much that we sabotage it. Aston's face reddened. "I don't know what you're implying." "The power didn't just fail," Lara announced, emerging from the control room. "Someone manually overrode our systems. Would you like to explain that, Aston?" Before he could respond, I started playing a simple melody on a nearby piano, cutting through the chaos. One by one, the other musical elements fell into harmony, creating something unexpectedly beautiful. "Sometimes discord is necessary," I said, continuing to play. "Sometimes we need to break everything down to build something better. Isn't that what design is about? What music is about? What life is about?" Paris joined in with her violin, weaving through the furniture displays. Each piece she passed responded to her presence, adding layers to our impromptu performance. "My grandfather built this company on innovation," I continued, my voice carrying over the music. "He saw a world changing after the war and adapted. Now we're facing different changes, but the principle is the same." The audience was transfixed. Even the social media influencers had lowered their phones, caught up in the moment. This isn't about destroying tradition. I locked eyes with my father. It's about honoring it by letting it evolve. The melody swelled as I poured everything into it. Years of rejection, months of planning, weeks of work, all crystallizing into this moment. Paris matched me note for note, our music dancing through the transformed showroom. "Ridiculous," Aston scoffed, but a young woman in designer clothes shushed him. "I'll take 2 of those dining sets," she announced. "The ones that play that gorgeous minor key transition." Like a dam breaking, other voices joined in. Orders were placed, cards were exchanged, and Lara's tablet pinged continuously with press inquiries. "Edward," Aston appealed to my father, "you can't seriously—" "I think," Dad said slowly. "You should leave, Aston. We'll discuss your resignation tomorrow." The room buzzed with excitement as Aston stormed out. I kept playing, but my father's approach made my fingers tremble slightly on the keys. "Don't stop," he said softly. "Your mother used to play like this. Like the music was a living thing." "Dad, I was wrong." The words came out rough, unpracticed. "About everything, the business, your music, you." The melody softened as Paris took over the main line, letting me turn to face him. "I was wrong too," I admitted. "This wasn't about revenge. Not really." "Then what was it about?" I gestured to the room, to Marin hugging Lara, to the excited crowds, to Paris's triumphant playing. "About proving we can build something new without destroying what matters." He nodded, emotion finally cracking his composed facade. "Would you consider coming back? Not to take over, but to help guide us forward. On your terms." "On my terms," I repeated, turning back to the piano. "That includes keeping my concerts at Le Petit Journal." I wouldn't expect anything less from a Montgomery. As if on cue, Paris launched into our finale piece, the one about butterflies and rain that had started everything. The one my father had once silenced. This time, he stood beside me as I played, watching the room come alive with music and light and possibility. Jacoby appeared with his notebook. "Well, was it revenge or redemption?" I smiled, my fingers dancing across the keys. "Neither. It was a revolution." The music soared, and with it, everything we'd built from the ashes of what we'd broken. Sometimes I realized the sweetest victory isn't in proving someone wrong. It's in proving yourself right. "Play it again," Dad said, standing in the doorway of the music room, my music room, in the Montgomery mansion. "Aren't you tired of that piece yet?" I asked, but my fingers were already finding the opening notes of the butterfly melody. "It reminds me of your mother," he said, settling into the leather armchair we'd designed together, one that played soft jazz when you sat in it. "And of how close I came to losing you too." Outside, camera flashes lit up the garden where Lara was directing a photo shoot for our latest collection. Paris's violin could be heard weaving through the furniture displays, recording musical signatures for each piece. "Speaking of losing things," Marin burst in, waving her tablet. "The London showroom just sold out of the musical vanity sets. Again." "Already?" I kept playing, adding a triumphant flourish to the bridge. "That's the third time this month. People love the idea of furniture that responds to them." She grinned. "The waiting list is getting ridiculous." "Good thing we have that factory in Milan opening next week," Dad mused. "Though I still think—" "No," Marin and I said together. "You promised," I reminded him. "No more 18-hour workdays, doctor's orders." He grumbled but settled deeper into the chair, letting its gentle music soothe him. The heart attack had been minor, but it had scared us all enough to force some changes. Jacoby appeared in the doorway, his ever-present notebook replaced by a magazine. "Have you seen the article?" "Which one?" Marin asked. "The Forbes profile? The Design Awards coverage?" "No, this one." He tossed the magazine onto the piano. The headline read, "The Montgomery Revolution: How One Family's Drama Created a Design Renaissance." "They make us sound like a soap opera," I complained, but kept reading. "Well, you kind of are," Paris called from the hallway. "Rich family, prodigal daughter, dramatic showdowns, near bankruptcy, triumphant comeback. It's very dynasty." "Minus the shoulder pads," Marin added. "Don't give Lara any ideas," I warned. "She's already talking about a reality show." "Now that would be interesting," Jacoby mused. "The musical furniture moguls of—" "No," Dad and I said firmly. The afternoon sun streamed through the windows, catching the crystal chandelier. Another piece that now played its own melody when the light hit it just right. Everything in the house had music now, turning the mansion into one giant instrument that responded to its inhabitants. "Did you ever imagine this?" Paris asked, joining us with her violin. "When we were playing on street corners in Montmartre?" "Never," I admitted, transitioning into a new composition. Something about sunlight and second chances. I thought I was choosing between music and family. Turns out I just needed to make them harmonize. "Speaking of harmony," Marin interrupted, "the board meeting starts in 10 minutes. They want to discuss expanding into hotels." Dad stood, straightening his tie. "What do you think, Noelle?" "I think—" I played a challenging sequence, watching the room's lighting respond. "I think we need to hear their pitch first. Innovation without purpose is just noise." He nodded approvingly. "You sound like a proper businesswoman." "No," I corrected, standing from the piano. "I sound like an artist who learned to speak business. There's a difference." Jacoby closed his notebook with a familiar snap. "And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the real story here. Not the prodigal daughter's return, but the father who learned to listen and the daughter who learned to translate." "Always the critic," Paris teased. "Always the observer," he countered. "Speaking of which, your concert tonight will not be turned into another furniture showcase," I finished. "Some things stay separate." "Balance," Dad said quietly. "Your mother would be proud of that too." The word hung in the air like a perfect note. Balance. Between art and commerce, tradition and innovation, family and freedom. The very thing I'd been searching for all along. "We should go." Marin checked her watch. "The board's waiting." As everyone filed out, I lingered at the piano, playing those first few notes of the butterfly song. The room's systems responded automatically, creating a cascade of light and harmony. "Coming?" Dad asked from the doorway. "Right behind you." I stood but paused to touch the piano keys one last time. Just remembering something. "What's that?" "The little girl who used to sneak in here to compose. She thought she had to choose between her music and her family's approval. He walked back to me, placing a hand on my shoulder. And now, I gestured to the house around us, filled with music and light and possibility. Now she knows that sometimes the hardest songs are the ones most worth playing. Even if some people try to stop the music. Especially then. I linked my arm through his. Because here's what I learned in Paris. You can't stop music any more than you can stop progress. You can only choose whether to fight it or help conduct it. He squeezed my arm as we walked to the boardroom. Then let's go conduct. Behind us, the butterfly melody played softly, echoing through a house that had finally learned to sing.